The courtroom in Dayton, Ohio felt enormous that morning. To 10-year-old Maya Jenkins, the walls rose too high, the ceilings too far away, and the silence in the room too loud. She sat at the witness stand in a pale blue dress with matching barrettes clipped at the ends of her braids. Her legs didn't reach the floor. They dangled above the marble tiles, still, not swinging, as if she didn't want to take up any more space than she already did. By her side, pressed tightly against her right leg, was her golden retriever, Samson. He lay with his head down and eyes half closed, the picture of calm. Most people in the room assumed the dog was there for comfort, to ease her nerves in this intimidating space. That was true in part, but not entirely. Maya's fingers were wound tight around Samson's leash. She hadn't spoken yet. She hadn't moved much either. There was something almost unsettling about how composed she was. Children, especially kids her age, weren't supposed to be this still, especially not in a courtroom full of strangers. On the bench above, Judge Raymond Cole adjusted his glasses. He was in his early 60s, tall, with wisps of silver hair and the weary posture of someone who'd spent decades watching stories unravel in rooms like this. He'd presided over drug cases, custody battles, even a few murder trials. But something about this morning felt different. Maybe it was the dog. Maybe it was the way Maya stared straight ahead, unblinking. Or maybe it was the fact that no one, not the defense attorney, not the jury, not even the man on trial, could rattle her. Across the room sat the defendant, Leonard Craig, a man in his late 40s with a clean-shaven face, pressed slacks, and hands that were just a little too still. He sat beside his lawyer, who tapped a capped pen against a notepad with impatient rhythm. Leonard didn't look at Maya. Maya didn't look at him. Behind Maya in the second row of benches sat her mother, Nicole Jenkins. She held a tissue in one hand and the corner of a beaded cross in the other. She hadn't said a word since they arrived. Her eyes never left her daughter. The judge leaned into his microphone and cleared his throat. "Miss Jenkins, are you ready?" Maya didn't answer. Instead, she turned slightly toward a woman seated in the front row, her court-appointed trauma counselor, Lisa Moreno. Lisa gave the smallest of nods. That was all Maya needed. "Yes, Your Honor," Lisa replied for her. "She's ready." Judge Cole nodded once, then turned toward the bailiff. "Bring in the witness." A side door opened. Two officers stepped out, one leading Leonard toward the witness stand. Leonard Craig moved slowly, like someone who knew eyes were on him. He tried to appear relaxed, but his shoulders gave him away. His eyes kept flicking, not toward the judge, not toward the jury, but toward the golden retriever resting against the child's leg. And Samson, who hadn't so much as shifted in the last 5 minutes, suddenly lifted his head. No growl, no bark, just quiet awareness. Maya didn't move. Not a blink, not a flinch, but her hand tightened ever so slightly on the leash. Nobody seemed to notice. The prosecutor, Dana Reed, rose from her chair and approached the stand. She was mid-40s, calm but firm, her jacket crisply tailored. "Mr. Craig," she began, "can you tell us where you were on the evening of July 19th? Leonard leaned toward the microphone. "At home, watching a baseball game, alone." Dana paused. "And you expect this court to accept that without evidence?" "I'm telling the truth," he said, leaning back. In the gallery, Nicole's fingers curled tighter around her tissue. Maya's face didn't change, but her chest rose and fell in slow, purposeful rhythm, like someone concentrating on appearing okay. Dana kept questioning, going over timelines, locations, and patterns. It was routine, procedural, until she paused and gestured to a file folder beside her. She placed it gently on the rail, flipped it open. Photos? The kind no one should ever have to show in a room like this. Maya's eyes dropped. Samson leaned in closer. The entire courtroom grew quieter, not because of what was being said, but because of what wasn't. Leonard shifted in his seat. "She's making this up," he snapped, his voice cracking into the silence. "That dog, he's just trained to make a show. This whole thing is a setup." And that's when Maya moved. Not her face, not her voice, just her hand, behind her back, 2 gentle taps. If any of this is landing with you, feel free to like, share it with someone who'd get it, and let me know what you're thinking in the comments. The taps were soft, barely noticeable. 2 fingers against the back of Maya's chair, quick and controlled, like she'd done it 100 times. Samson's ears twitched. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but everything about him changed. His head rose, his posture shifted, chest out, body alert, eyes locked. He turned toward Leonard Craig and stared. Not with aggression, not with fear, with purpose. Leonard blinked, just once, then again, and slowly, almost involuntarily, he leaned back in his seat. Nobody had told the jury what the dog was trained to do, not in detail. They knew he was a comfort animal, a therapy dog. But no one explained the signal system, the quiet language between a child who couldn't always speak and the dog who knew when silence meant danger. Donna Reed didn't flinch. She stepped closer to the witness stand, keeping her tone level. Mr. Craig, you've stated you were home alone that evening. No phone records, no texts, no witnesses to verify. Leonard cleared his throat. That's right. And you've also stated you've never met this child, never been to her school, never spoken with her, not once. He nodded too quickly. Correct. Behind him the gallery had gone still. Even the smallest movements, the rustle of a notepad, the squeak of a shoe, seemed to vanish into the weight of the room. Samson still hadn't moved. His eyes remained locked on Leonard. Dana turned to Maya. Her voice softened. Maya, do you feel safe right now? Maya didn't speak. She didn't need to. She reached down and touched Samson's back with her fingers, and in response, a sound rose from his chest. Not loud. A low, steady rumble, more vibration than voice. But it was enough. Leonard jerked slightly in his seat. The judge leaned forward. Dana turned to the jury. This dog wasn't trained for tricks. He was trained to watch her, to know her, with help from a certified K9 handler and trauma therapist. That growl you just heard? She paused. That wasn't fear. That was recognition. The defense attorney shot to his feet. Objection. Speculation. The dog cannot testify. Judge Cole didn't hesitate. Sit down, Mr. Gaines. You'll have your chance. Samson's growl faded. He didn't lunge. He didn't bark. He simply stood his ground. And across the room, Leonard Craig began to sweat. No one said it out loud. Not yet. But everyone in the room could feel it. Something had shifted. The child had spoken without a word. And the dog had answered. 2 months earlier, the summer heat in Chattanooga, Tennessee, was just starting to loosen its grip. In the backyard of a one-story brick house, Maya Jenkins sat cross-legged in a lawn chair, watching her golden retriever chase a red ball through patchy grass. The sun hung low, casting long shadows and a warm glow over everything it touched. Another ball rested in her hand, but she didn't throw it. Not yet. Her aunt, Camille Rhodes, stood nearby, arms folded loosely across her chest. A retired police K9 handler with a spine like steel and eyes that missed nothing. Years of busts, narcotics, stings, and courtroom depositions had made her sharp. But around Maya, that edge softened. Camille kneeled beside her, letting her knees pop as she crouched. You sure about this, kid? She asked, voice low. We don't have to keep going unless you're ready. Maya didn't look at her. She looked at Samson, who had flopped down in the grass, tongue hanging out, chest rising slow and steady. Then she spoke. I don't want him to ever look at me again, she whispered. Camille didn't blink. She just nodded. Then we teach Samson how to watch for you. And that's how it began. At first, it was just a game. Camille and a neighbor would take turns standing across the yard pretending to be strangers. If Maya tapped her left shoe once, Samson would stay by her side. If she tapped behind her back, 2 quick touches. He would move forward, place himself between Maya and the person in front of her. Samson was smart, gentle, attentive. He learned quickly, every day after school, every weekend, over and over. Maya was quiet but laser-focused. She didn't talk much, but she never missed a cue. Camille watched them from the porch sometimes, notebook in hand, scribbling adjustments. Other times, she just let them work it out, child and dog, building a private language of safety. Eventually, it became automatic. When Maya tensed, Samson moved. When her breath changed, he leaned in. When her fingers twitched, he watched the room. One evening, after a longer than usual training session, Camille handed Maya a bottle of water and sat beside her on the back steps. You know, she said gently, some people in that courtroom, they might not believe you. Some adults get scared of being wrong. Maya looked down. What if I mess up? You won't, Camille replied, no hesitation. But even if you freeze, Samson won't. He'll be your voice when you don't have words. That's what we trained him for. There was a pause, heavy but honest. Then Maya asked something she hadn't said out loud before. Do you think he remembers what he did to me? Camille exhaled slowly. She didn't lie. Maybe not the way you do, she said. But men like that? They remember enough to be afraid of the truth. The next day, when Nicole came to pick Maya up, her shoulders looked heavier than usual. Her hair was tied back, her eyes rimmed red. Camille pulled her aside. She's stronger than she looks, she whispered. But don't let her carry this alone. When it's time, you look that man in the eye. Nicole nodded, but her hands trembled. Before they left, Maya ran back and hugged Camille tight, her voice muffled into her aunt's shoulder. Thank you. Camille held on longer than she needed to. The day before the hearing, they ran one final mock session. Camille wore aviator sunglasses and an old blazer, trying her best to resemble someone from the courtroom. She threw out questions, pressured, prodded, played roles. Maya stood with Samson by her side. She gave the signal, and Samson moved, unshakable. Camille swallowed hard. Something about that stillness, about how the dog took position without hesitation, hit different this time. You're ready, she said softly. But training in a backyard was one thing. Facing the real thing under fluorescent lights, with 12 strangers and a man pretending he didn't know you, that was something else entirely. Back in the courtroom, nothing looked different. The walls hadn't moved, the lighting hadn't changed. The people all sat in the same places, but everything felt different. Maya sat perfectly still, her hand resting lightly on Samson's back. The dog hadn't moved since the two-tap signal, but his energy had shifted. He was no longer a comfort animal. He was a sentinel. Samson's eyes stayed locked on Leonard Craig. His posture was tall now, ears slightly forward, shoulders stiff, quiet, controlled, and unshakably focused. Leonard noticed. He leaned ever so slightly away from the edge of the witness stand. His grip on the rail tightened. It wasn't obvious to everyone, but to those watching closely, especially the jury, it was clear. Something was happening that no cross-examination could explain away. Donna Reed continued her questions, voice steady, almost casual. You told us earlier that you didn't know Maya, that you've never interacted with her, never visited her school. Are you standing by that? Leonard's voice came out thinner than before. Yes. Dana turned slightly toward the jury, letting her silence land before speaking again. And yet, she said carefully, every time you speak, this dog reacts. Not to sound, not to movement, to you. The jurors were watching now. Not her, not Maya, not even the judge. They were watching Samson. Maya still hadn't lifted her gaze. Her hands stayed calm, her breathing measured, but her dog was speaking. Judge Cole shifted in his chair. His hand went to his glasses, adjusted them higher on his nose. Maya, Dana said gently, turning back to the girl, do you feel okay to continue? No words, just a nod. Dana returned to her table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, she said, with your permission, I'd like to introduce a short piece of video evidence. The judge gave a slow nod. Proceed. A screen lowered behind the witness stand. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly, and on the screen, a backyard flickered to life. It showed Maya walking across grass, shoulders hunched, face focused. Samson walked beside her. In the frame stood Camille, mimicking strangers, lawyers, authority figures. Maya gave a single tap. Samson stood still. She tapped twice behind her back. He moved forward, placing himself between her and the adult. Over and over, the sequence repeated. No shouting, no drama, just precision. In one clip, Maya froze mid-step. Samson moved first. Back in the courtroom, you could hear someone swallow. When the screen went black again, no one moved. Judge Cole leaned forward. That dog, did all that on signal alone? Dana nodded. All based on trauma response training, overseen by a certified law enforcement K-9 handler. Leonard shifted again. His collar looked tighter. That's when Maya finally looked up. Not for long, just long enough. Her eyes met Leonard's. Her voice was quiet but clear. He never yells. He whispers. Dana turned slowly. Who, Maya? She didn't hesitate. She lifted one hand and pointed across the room. Him. Leonard flinched. He stood abruptly, hands up. This is insane, he shouted. You're letting a child and a dog ruin my life. Samson stood. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just stood, still, protective. The bailiff moved toward Leonard. Sit down, the judge warned. Now. Leonard dropped into his seat, face pale. No one smiled. Not the jury, not the judge, not his own attorney. The room had changed again. No longer about stories or timelines or denials. Now it was about presence, about a dog that never looked away, and a child who never needed to speak loudly to be heard. The judge called for a 5-minute recess. The gavel echoed once, but no one moved. The courtroom didn't buzz with conversation or stretch its legs. It held its breath. Maya remained in her seat. Samson stood beside her, still watching, still anchored. His presence wasn't loud, but it filled the room like thunder just before it hits. Judge Cole leaned back in his chair, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He'd seen expert witnesses and DNA charts and diagrams that could fill 3 whiteboards. But he'd never seen something like this. A child who didn't need words. A dog who didn't need permission. From the gallery, Camille sat behind the rail, calm but alert. Her eyes locked on Maya, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. Weeks ago, she told Maya something no one else had ever said. Your truth doesn't need to shout to be real. Sometimes it just has to stand its ground. As the minutes ticked by, Leonard Craig sat hunched beside his attorney. He wasn't angry now. He looked rattled. One hand tugged at his collar, the other fidgeted with his cuffs. His attorney leaned in, whispering furiously. But Leonard wasn't listening. He was watching the dog. When recess ended, Dana Reed rose from her seat. Her tone was composed but heavier now, grounded in certainty. Your Honor, she began, with your permission, I'd like to recall Detective Alyssa Monroe to the stand for a brief clarification. Proceed, said the judge. Detective Monroe stepped forward in uniform, dark boots quiet against the tile. She had led the initial investigation, back when the only thing they had was a frightened child and a few half-finished sketches. Dana handed her a photo. Detective, do you recognize the man in this picture? Yes, that's the defendant, Leonard Craig. And where was this photo taken? At Lincoln Ridge Elementary, field day, Maya's school. Was he on staff? No. A parent of a student? He was a guest volunteer, brought in through a mentorship program. The program has since been suspended. Dana let that hang for a beat. Did he have unsupervised access to any of the children during the event? Yes. We confirmed he was briefly alone with a student in a classroom. Which student? Maya Jenkins. The gallery shifted just slightly. Someone exhaled. Another whispered, "Oh my God." No objections, no interruptions. Even the defense attorney sat frozen. Dana turned toward the jury. You've seen the training. You've seen how this child and her dog operate. Now you know why. Leonard stood again, voice cracking. You're being manipulated. That dog doesn't know anything. Samson didn't bark. He stepped forward once, shoulders squared, silent but unmistakably protective. Dana didn't flinch. She turned back toward the bench. Your Honor, I'd also like to submit a drawing Maya made during her counseling sessions. It was created prior to her meeting the dog. The judge nodded. The image was passed to the jury. A child's sketch, crayon and pencil on thick paper. A little girl standing small. Behind her, a tall figure with glasses and a familiar jawline. Next to her, a golden dog. Dana asked gently, had she met Samson when she drew this? No, said the counselor. That came weeks later. Dana turned to Leonard. Would you like to explain how a child you claim you never met could describe you so accurately, down to your glasses, before any legal action began? Leonard's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She's confused, or someone told her, or she remembers, Dana said, quiet but final. Then the side doors creaked open. A bailiff stepped forward and handed the judge a note. Judge Cole adjusted his glasses and read silently. His brow lifted. "Miss Reed," he said, "a new witness has come forward during recess. A former teaching assistant from another school. She claims to have information directly relevant to this case." Dana turned toward Leonard. Her expression didn't change, but Leonard's did. He paled, jaw clenched. And when the doors opened again and a woman in her early 30s stepped into the room, the entire jury turned to follow her. Bridget Allen, ID tag still clipped to her sweater. She walked to the stand and was sworn in. "I recognize him," she said, pointing at Leonard. "He volunteered at our school 3 years ago. We had complaints, multiple, about him following children, whispering to them, but nothing stuck. Nobody believed the kids." The courtroom didn't move. Dana gave the jury one last glance. "This is no longer about speculation. This is about exposure, patterns, the things children are too scared to say, and the things adults refuse to see." Samson remained at Maya's feet, unmoving, silent. But he didn't have to move. Everyone was listening now, and for the first time, they believed her. The courtroom door shut with a soft click, but the energy inside didn't settle. If anything, it tightened. Every seat remained filled, every shoulder stiff with attention. Bridget Allen sat tall in the witness chair, hands folded, voice steady. "I filed 2 reports," she said. "First to the assistant principal, then to the district coordinator. Same man, same pattern. Whispered to students. Found excuses to be alone with them. I was told to document it quietly and move on." Judge Cole leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "And the district took no disciplinary action?" "None. They said unless there was a formal complaint from a parent, it would cause unnecessary trouble." Donna Reed turned slowly to face the jury. "You've now heard from a second school, another staff member who saw the same behaviors. This isn't coincidence, it's a pattern." Leonard Craig looked like a man unraveling. His hands trembled slightly on the table in front of him. He wasn't pretending to be composed anymore. His lawyer whispered something fast in his ear, but Leonard didn't nod, didn't answer. He just stared at the little girl sitting at the witness bench. Maya hadn't moved. Her posture was still, but her eyes were open now. Her gaze was firm, and Samson, still at her feet, watched every twitch of Leonard's hands. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He didn't need to. Bridget Allen was dismissed from the stand. As she passed by the jury, one older woman reached for a tissue. Another crossed his arms and leaned forward. Dana stayed standing. "Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to reintroduce Maya's school counselor, Ms. Erica Thorne." Judge Cole gave a nod. Ms. Thorne took the stand, mid-40s, glasses hanging from a beaded chain. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I met with Maya several times after the school field day. She didn't say much, but she always drew. The same man, the same small details. His glasses, his shirt, his belt, and always standing too close to her." Dana held up another drawing. "This one?" "Yes, she drew that before she was introduced to the dog, before she knew this case would even go to court." Judge Cole took the drawing, examined it, and this time no one questioned its value. Dana looked over at Leonard. "You said you'd never met her, that she made it all up, but how do you explain her describing your appearance weeks before your name was even on paper?" Leonard stammered. She probably saw me on TV, at some event. I don't..." But the words didn't stick. The jury didn't move. And then, without fanfare, Samson took one quiet step forward. No sound, just presence. It was enough. One juror, early 30s, suit jacket rumpled, glanced toward the others. A nod passed silently. They weren't waiting for closing arguments anymore. The evidence wasn't just on paper. It was walking, breathing, watching. And the man who'd said he didn't know Maya, he couldn't even hold her gaze now. Judge Cole sat back, voice flat. "We'll break for deliberation. Jurors, you'll be escorted to the conference room." As they filed out, not one looked at Leonard Craig, but several looked at Maya, and at the dog who never left her side. The jury was gone for nearly 2 hours, but it felt longer, the kind of silence that wraps itself around a room and refuses to let go. Maya hadn't left her seat. Neither had Samson. He'd finally laid down again, his head resting gently across her shoes, like he knew the hard part was almost over. Camille stood near the back, arms crossed, her stance calm but alert. Nicole sat just behind her daughter, still clutching the same tissue she'd been twisting since morning. Her lips never moved. She didn't pray out loud, but her eyes never closed. Leonard Craig sat motionless beside his lawyer. The earlier bluster had drained from him completely. His shoulders slumped. He looked smaller now. When the bailiff finally called the courtroom to order, everyone stood. Judge Cole returned, glasses perched low on his nose. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a man in a weathered navy suit with a slight southern drawl, stood. We have, Your Honor. Please read the findings. The courtroom seemed to hold a single breath. On the count of criminal misconduct with a minor, the foreman said, we find the defendant guilty. The word landed like stone, quiet, heavy, final. And on the count of trespassing on school property with intent to harm, he paused. Guilty. Leonard's body sagged. He didn't speak. He didn't argue. This time there were no outbursts, just the sound of papers shifting and a few soft exhales. Dana Reed closed her binder, but she didn't smile. This wasn't the kind of case that left room for celebration. It just left space for relief. Judge Cole looked toward Maya, then down at Samson. Miss Jenkins, he said, his voice a little softer. You didn't say much today, but you said more than many adults ever could. Maya didn't speak, but she nodded. And Samson, the judge added, removing his glasses for the first time all day. If I had a medal to give, he'd be wearing it. That was the moment a few people finally smiled. Not big, not loud, but real. The gavel hit once. Court adjourned, but what had been revealed in that room wouldn't be leaving with it. Outside the courthouse, the world hadn't changed. Cars still rolled past. Reporters still clustered near the steps with cameras and questions. But for the people walking out that side door, something had shifted. Nicole held Maya's hand tight as they walked toward the car. A reporter tried to ask a question. Meek raised halfway. Nicole didn't break stride. No questions today, she said, calm, firm. We're just going home. Camille opened the passenger door. Samson hopped in first, tail wagging once before he curled into the back seat. Maya climbed in beside him without a word, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. They didn't talk much on the ride back. No one needed to. The radio stayed off. The highway stretched quiet in front of them, and behind them, the courthouse shrank into the distance. Halfway home, Maya finally spoke. Is he going away forever? Nicole met her daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. Her voice was steady but soft. I don't know, baby, but I do know this. He won't ever hurt you again. Maya looked down at Samson, who licked her hand without even lifting his head. Back at the house, Camille hung her coat and reached for the leash. I'm going to walk him. I want to come, Maya said, stepping toward the door. You don't have to. I want to. So they went. Just the two of them and the dog. The sun had dipped behind the trees and the street was empty. Just gravel underfoot, the occasional rustle of leaves, and Samson's slow, steady steps. At one point, Maya stopped and looked up. Do you think there's other kids? You know, scared like I was? Camille didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. More than we think. Maya was quiet for a long time, then almost too softly to hear. Can we teach other dogs too? Camille turned to look at her. This quiet girl with eyes too old for her age, now making plans out loud. Yeah, she said, I think we can. 2 weeks later, a letter came from the school district. They'd seen the court footage, read the transcripts, and they wanted to launch a new safety initiative. Anonymous reporting, therapy dogs on campus, updated background checks for volunteers. Camille held the letter in one hand, a cup of coffee in the other. You did that, she said, nodding toward Maya. Maya didn't look up from her sketch pad. No, we did. And she was right. It hadn't happened with shouting or force. It happened with stillness, with presence, with belief. And now, finally, it was turning into something bigger than just one child, one dog, one trial. It was becoming something other kids might never have to explain with words. The first Saturday was quiet. No flyers, no press. Just a patch of grass near the city park, a fold-out table, and a plastic bin full of tennis balls and training harnesses. Camille set down the water bowls while Maya arranged the hand signal cards she'd drawn herself. Simple sketches, arrows, symbols only she fully understood. Samson sat nearby in the shade, older now but still watchful. Still her shadow. They called it signals. Maya's idea. At first it was just two kids. One wouldn't speak at all. The other never let go of their mom's sleeve. But they came. Then came more. Parents who didn't have answers, but had questions. Shelters who brought dogs that weren't quite ready for adoption, but weren't broken either. Every Saturday they came. Maya stood at the front with her notebook, voice soft but sure, showing how to give the command, how to feel the moment when words weren't enough. She didn't need a microphone. People leaned in to hear her. Samson was always there. Never center stage, just nearby. Watching, always watching. Sometimes strangers approached Maya in public. At a grocery store. At a bus stop. A woman once knelt and said thank you without explaining why. Maya didn't need her to. She didn't want praise. She just liked knowing that somewhere, someone else might get believed a little sooner. One evening as they packed up the field, Camille asked, "Do you ever wish the trial went differently?" Maya was brushing Samson's fur. She shook her head. If it didn't happen that way, nobody would have seen who he really was. Camille looked at her niece, not just as a survivor, but as something else now. A leader, a signal, herself. They stood in front of the small sign on the gate. The paw print, her idea too. "You turned something awful into something good," Camille said. Maya looked down at Samson, who blinked up at her with that same calm gaze he'd given her since the first day. "He helped me first," she whispered. And maybe that's what made it work. Not just the dog, not just the girl, but the silence between them that never needed explaining. Because sometimes the smallest voice doesn't echo by itself. Sometimes it needs someone to stand beside it and never flinch.